Oh, hello, and welcome to Desert Island Drams on Whisky and Cynicism. This is the first one for a little while, but it's really good to be back. I'm Simon Smith. I'm joined by Alex Dahlenburg here, all the way in at Sydney. So it's daytime for me, so I won't be having a full strength dram, but hopefully Alex is. So firstly, before we get any further, Alex, on that note, hi, welcome. How are you? And what are you drinking?
Thank you for having me. It is 9 o'clock here at night. So I can have full strength and really get into it. So I am having a Kalara distillery tonight. It's KD13. It is cask strength at 56%, done by Christy Lark Booth down in Hobart. So
Very
that's
nice.
what I'm drinking at the moment. I'm actually going to pour it now.
Please do. For the record, I'm having it's only lunchtime here, so I'm having a Ryan soda. Just an aperitif before lunch. It's interesting with the Australian whiskey industry, and I'm going to automatically tangent from what I said I would ask you. I've got a good friend in Sydney who we've been doing dram exchanges over the last year and kind of lockdown and stuff. And he sent me I think I'm up to 10 now, and at least 75% have been Australian. To me, that's a definite style evolving in Australia. There's linked flavors, and because I've been trying them blind, there's kind of a link there, and it's kind of got its own regionality. And this was from all over Oz as well. Is that something you've noticed, that Australia's style of spirit is becoming a little bit cohesive in the last few years?
Oh, it's getting more cohesive. We had a lot of variants early on. And I think that we're starting to get a little bit more age in some of our whiskey now, which I think that's where a lot of the cohesiveness is coming from. I do believe in a little bit of regionality. They say that the Hobart whiskey definitely has a style now, or Tassie whiskey has a style. I'm not too sure that we're seeing a lot of that from the mainland yet. There is quite a lot of diversity in flavour profiles. But I think as we get older, we're definitely going to come up with a beautiful style for Australia. And hopefully that rings out across the world.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was at Archeros a few years ago, we had a lot of Australian whiskey, and a lot of it really emulated Scotch, and a lot of it kind of didn't really emulate anything. A lot of it wasn't great, and some of it was amazing. And there was a lot of lack of consistency, not just in quality but flavor. But the style that I was noticing seemed to sit somewhere between Scottish and Japanese whiskey, which is kind of what you'd expect culturally, regionally. You know, it had kind of Scottish whiskey with a lot of like sandalwood notes and that kind of slightly incensey thing you get from a lot of Japanese stuff. Do you think there's an equal influence from the two sides as far as Australian whiskey goes?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think definitely more from Scotland in influence, 100%. You talk about when distilleries here have gone and done recce's or like recon trips. It's been to Scotland, and they've done a lot of work. And like, for example, the boys from Corowa spent a lot of time at Kilhoman. Okay. When they went over. So I think we've got a lot of influence from Scotland. I haven't seen too much of a Japanese influence. That's my experience. However, I think when we stop just doing cask strength whiskey here in Australia, we might start seeing that, because that trend of cask strength whiskey in Australia is huge. It's like we've got to be bigger and bolder than everyone else around. So I do think that we'll see a little bit more of that when we start diluting it.
Yeah, okay.
Or maybe even come up with more core expressions.
Sure. Yeah, I get. Well, to just so you know, as kind of compliment in kind, I know some of the more urban distilleries that have set up in Scotland recently have done their recce's in Oz, because urban distilleries sometimes happen more in Australia than over here traditional. So it's exchanging information.
It's so wonderful too. The whiskey industry is so great at exchanging industry secrets and that beautiful exchange of information. So that's something I'm really proud of, and why I stay so much in the whiskey industry is purely because of the wonderful people that are in it. It
does seem to be on the whole more of a leg up situation than a keep others down situation in whiskey, which is absolutely lovely.
Well, I know that's what it's like in Australia. Like, I've seen what the Lark family have done for so many distilleries. They would just lend their time to go out and help. And I think that in Australia, if we're all stronger together, I think that's the attitude that we're getting with a lot of distillers.
Sure. Which, I mean, yeah, absolutely. You know, a rising tide benefits all ships and all that. So that makes sense.
That's it. That's a beautiful expression.
from personal experience, Bill Lark did once put me up on Islay and cook me a prawn curry. So, you know, that even on a small, very small level, the Lark family have done favors to a lot of people.
Heard about that trip. Yep.
Yeah, that's that trip. Yeah.
That's that trip. I hear we're competing for best friend rights with Ross Blaney.
I think you've got him sewn up, to be honest. Mainly because of that trip, I think.
Oh, I think you've got it over me because of that trip. That's all we hear about in Australia. It's such a wonderful story that you guys got stuck in Islay in a tent that got soaked or flooded and broke, and all in the middle of an Islay festival. I think that was one of the greatest stories.
Yeah, and one that shows exactly what you're talking about, the amount of kind of help we were given from people in the whiskey industry, but be it lifts, be it places to stay and all that. For anyone watching, Ross Blaney and I did an episode in the first 10 of Desert Island Drams. We kind of covered it, but we have been threatening to get it down on paper in some way. So stay tuned. This might be the catalyst we need to write it down or do something with it.
It has to happen.
Yes, yeah, overcoming adversity while really pissed on whiskey for 3 days.
Yep. That's where that's where all of the best stories start.
Of course, yeah. No good story starts with a radish.
Or salad.
Yeah, exactly. So, what kind of leads on what I was going to ask you about is that when you're in Australia, you've got venues. I mean, like we all know the Speakeasy Group, where you have been toiling hard for 4 years. Is it you were there?
Nearly 4.5 years. I've been with the Speakeasy Group. So they had up to 8 venues across Sydney and Melbourne.
Yeah.
And we are down to 6 at the moment. We lost one due to a little bit of problems during COVID with landlords. But we did decide to close down Eau de Vie, which will be reopened in Sydney soon. So the 2.0 Sydney will be coming back.
Cool. So kind of 2 different styles of whiskey venue in and amongst Speakeasy Group and across Australia in general. You know, you've got Me All Know, which is kind of Viking themed. Sounds simplistic because it's much more than that, but with that kind of very kind of old school Scandinavian theme with the Viking drinking horns and kind of furs and that kind of thing. But still a Scottish whiskey bar in its kind of offering for the most part, and world whiskey, I guess.
I think it's very much world whiskey. I've put down a hell of a lot of Australian whiskey on that back bar.
Yeah.
But coming from another whiskey venue that I ran in Sydney, another top whiskey venue, Japanese whiskey didn't tend to sell so much in that venue, and I think it's to do with the style of food. Yeah. We were definitely going the bigger drams. So
sure.
We had world whiskey. So we had at our most just under 600 on the back bar in a little restaurant in Redfern.
Yeah, I said it was a lovely venue. I do have fond memories of it. Then you look at Baxter Inn, which is a Scotch whiskey bar, but I would say the look of it is much more American than anything, and the kind of style of it's quite American.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that kind of mixing of kind of whiskey being whiskey to be drunk in fun environments and good environments with good food and good atmosphere, which I think Australia can get away with a lot more than in Scotland. I mean, Scotland's kind of we are moving, but there's this thing of like a Scottish whiskey bar. It's either that or it's a modern Scottish pub, or it's there's nothing kind of breaking out from that. Do you think that's just more accepting of drinking whiskey from all places in all environments in Australia? Is it just a little bit more laissez-faire than we have here? Having experienced
I think in Australia that whiskey is just becoming a way of dining, which is super exciting. Dining and part of the experience. So whatever that experience is, there's a whiskey that could go with it. When you think of drinking whiskey in a bar in Scotland, I think of the pot still.
Yeah.
Which is your very old pub style venue. We have pub style venue, like, for example, the Duke of Clarence here. But we don't see those big, gastro pub style venues here with whiskey too much.
Mm-hmm.
So it is more specialized bars, and they all offer an individual experience. And I think that whiskey is such a wonderful spirit because of the diversity in the liquid that you can actually just put it with any experience. So you can have a high-end restaurant and I'll have a bucket load of whiskey on the back bar ready for you.
It's interesting that you say about it being part of a dining experience, because historically it's not been associated with that in Scotland at all. And even people who were at the forefront of the industry and quite innovative and kind of more modern in their outlook have always said it's just not really designed for dining. It's an aperitif / digestive thing, and every so often someone tries to bring out a pairing menu, or there's an event that happens or whatever, and it does get thrown around, but it seems to never stick. But is that something
in Scotland?
In Scotland, yeah. I mean.
Wow. See, in Australia, we're all about pairing dinners with whiskey. We have a brand at Meolna called Peat and Meat, which we take the most heavily peated whiskey. We've done Lefroy, we've done Octomore, we've launched 2 Octomores actually. We've done Port Charlotte. We've done Bamore. We've done so many different dinners with Peat and Meat. And it's quite a high spend per head, but they do walk away with a gift bottle as well of something that's been launched or new from the distillery, or that's being launched in Australia. We've done one with Highland Park. I think whiskey dinners here in Australia are quite the thing that we are. I suppose that in responsible service of alcohol, we're always looking to put some food somewhere in there to keep everyone healthy and happy, and drinking for longer, I suppose. But it's definitely part of the culture here that when you go to a whiskey dinner or you go to a whiskey event, there's going to be food served, and most of the time it's going to be matched. Yeah.
I mean, I was very kindly invited to a very nice dinner, maybe 10 of us in a private dining room, very, very prestigious distillery, and an exceptional meal. And we probably had, I mean, it was 5 figures the value of the bottles on the table at the dinner. But with every course, we were served wine and a dram. But it was a small dram that was kind of almost introduced by the host and was talked about and drank. But there was wine to be drunk with the food. It wasn't a pairing thing. It was just, we're gonna have a little dram along the way because we're gonna taste these amazing whiskeys. But obviously, for the meal situation, you want to be drinking wine. It's so delineated here that I mean, whiskey pairing dinners do exist and have existed, but it's by no means the go-to, because the kind of common thinking is that whiskey and food pairing is almost a waste of time in a way, and that there's no established theory of what goes with what, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
Is there a formula there? Like, I mean, PT drams that go with certain foods and that kind of thing?
I don't think there's necessarily a formula, because just like whiskey, food can be matched with anything.
Sure.
I mean, what was really cool in Australia is we started seeing people move away from pairing whiskey and cheese and whiskey. And people are getting a hell of a lot more creative with canapes that are directly paired to cut or contrast or complement the flavor of the whiskey. And I think if you have someone that's doing that really well and has an understanding of the palate wheel or the flavor wheel, that you're going to see things that are brought out in whiskey. Same as we add water to whiskey, it brings out further flavor profiles. I find that you can do that with whiskey as well. We do it with wine. We've done it with wine for years. Why wouldn't we do it with whiskey? I was talking to you. Sorry, you do agree?
Oh, I 100% agree with you. It's something that I've always wondered why it doesn't exist in the way it does. And I guess part of the argument has always been ABV of whiskey shocks the palate, so it kind of knackers the food side as opposed to, say, wine. But I mean, I've done whiskey dinners where you take a really light whiskey and you dilute it to wine strength and chill it and serve it like a glass of wine and all these kind of things. There are ways and means, but it's just never really taken off here, interestingly.
Well, it's funny. I was with David Vitale in Starwood one time, and he was taking me around the distillery. It was when they released their old-fashioned bottle. It's literally a pre-mixed old-fashioned. And one of the things that he said was, that was really conveniently placed too, wasn't
it?
Yeah. You're welcome, David. He said that what he'd like to see is people in Australia or people around the world, when they're going to dinner at a friend's house, then instead of taking a bottle of wine, you take a bottle of whiskey.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a beautiful thing.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's something that, even during, tastings or tours or all that kind of thing, you very rarely hear someone say, this dram would pair well with.
Yeah.
It's more experiential, I guess, historically.
Yeah.
So someone might say this is a great dram that, depending on progressive as something, you might say the great dram, a hot day, chuck it over ice or with some soda, like it's perfect for that. Or this is a post in a cold night by the fire dram, and myriad things in between. But it kind of tends to be linked to an experience and a setting rather than food. which maybe just says a lot about the quality of British cooking over the years more than anything. Yeah, no one really wants to think about food if they don't have to, but it's interesting that's where that's gone in Australia, because it must have been developing a bit while I was there, and I obviously did see that. But the fact that it's really took hold that way is, I mean, it shows it's a huge enlightenment, forward-thinking way of consuming whiskey for a start for me.
Yeah, well, there's a wonderful pub in Newtown, Webster's. They actually are one of the pubs that do whiskey really, really well. Like the Clock does as well in Surrey Hills, but Webster's has one of the most amazing whiskey collections. And it's quite contrasting in their clientele on a Friday, Saturday night for the rooftop bar upstairs, which is all vodka and sodas. And then on the next level down, they have this amazing whiskey collection. And once a month, they will do a whiskey dinner and they will pack it out with 60 to 90 people. And it's all paired, and the ambassadors or the brand managers get up and talk about it and how it pairs well with the food. So I think when we talk, I think we need to put a little bit back to the ambassadors in Australia, because they are selling the whiskey experience, but they're elevating it with food pairings and trying to just change that whole sit down and have a drink and make it more, I don't know, consumer friendly with everyone.
Yeah, I mean that's a hugely enlightened way to do things, and I don't know if it's whether, I mean, without dipping too far culturally into it, you know, in the UK, we've historically not had that kind of dinner table, sharing food, sharing wine that maybe a lot of Europe has traditionally had, and all that. So maybe we just never think to do that with. And I think it was something we could definitely learn from. And maybe, you know, this might be happening every other day in London with, you know, with a much more kind of a bigger and more diverse population. But up here, it's certainly not something we talk about.
Well, my English grandmother, or English background grandmother, does enjoy Balvenie 17-year-old with the Sunday roast quite regularly.
Well, there you go. There you go. Great, actually. And what about for world whiskies in Oz, or as you say, like, there's definitely this kind of influence from Scottish whiskey in the production of Australian whiskey, but whiskies from around the world accepted quite easily from, I mean, we're seeing like hundreds of countries springing up now.
Absolutely. I think the Australian whiskey drinkers, we just want to try anything and everything we can. When we talk about whiskey nerds, and that is said with love, because I am one myself, when we talk about whiskey nerds in Australia, they want it all. They want to know where it's from, who made it, and they're not shy about a little bit of off-script liquid. So stuff that's not conventionally made, we want to know about it.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, McMira is doing some wonderful things. And when we have that on the back bar, it just sells. It goes so quickly. In venues I've had, I actually couldn't keep any Japanese whiskey on the shelf. Mm-hmm. So it would, the moment I put it on, it would just fly out the door.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah, I do think we have quite a cask strength culture here, though. And I think that needs to probably break down a little bit, because everything we're drinking at the moment is cask strength. And I'll tell you now, my palate can't quite handle it as much. And you know, that good old whiskey burn you get when you're on whiskey trips, it's almost every day now, purely because everything we're drinking or everything we're trying is cask strength.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly an element of that here, where a lot of people think, oh, well, cask strength is the only way to drink whiskey and all that kind of nonsense. But I've kind of, certainly the last year or two, revolted away from that. I'm drinking a lot of 40% blends from the 80s that have probably oxidized to lower now, and it's kind of quite nice and really approachable, like really easy drink.
I like 45 to 46 is kind of like my happy spot.
Yeah, I think that's generally considered for most Drams about the sweet spot for single malt anyway.
Yeah. But then, I mean, there's whiskey as well that is just amazing as it is. I know that, I don't know whether I'm allowed to say that. Fuck it, I'll say it anyway. I know that Highland Park is actually releasing cask strength over here in Australia as a core range, which is pretty cool.
Okay, nice.
So, and it's the perfect market for it, because we are cask strength junkies right now.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I mean, we don't see much Highland Park cask strength unless it's kind of bottled for someone. You know, we get
like us. like we did with Mjolnir. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we did. There was one for the independent whiskey bars in Scotland a while back, and there's and it's great at cast strength. It's really good at cast strength.
It's really good at cast strength. We released one with Mjolnir, and it was 56.5%. We put three casks together. There were 1,700 bottles. It was just an exclusive Australia release. And it was absolutely delicious. Like Dave Broom gave it 4 out of 5, which was pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah, if Broomy's giving you those kind of reviews, you're definitely on the right track.
He's a good man.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Okay, to kind of the questions I ask everyone, I guess first and foremost, apart from having to drink way too much cast strength whiskey, what annoys you most about the industry? Do you have what's your kind of bugbear with the whiskey or the drinks industry at large?
Yeah, I have a good one. I hate the negativity, and I'm pretty stern on it. I don't like in some of these whiskey groups that we've got going, the negativity that comes out. And I tend to find it's more in the consumer base rather than the industry base. But I'm strongly against any whiskey negativity online. I don't think that it needs to happen. If you don't like it, then don't drink it. I mean, because we're all here a short time, so drink the good stuff, drink the stuff you like. But why would you waste your time being vocal about something that you don't like? And here's the thing, what someone likes, someone may strongly dislike, but that's all, we're all individuals, and whiskey is so diverse. Don't waste your time on the stuff that you don't like. Don't waste your breath on it. Just, if you don't like it, then it's not for you, move on. So I really strongly hate the hate that comes out on some whiskey online groups. It's just not needed.
Yeah, I was actually having that exact conversation with my colleague yesterday, and it's getting to the point of there's a lot of opinion being displayed as fact, which really upsets me. You know, people saying, "Oh, that whiskey's shit," and you're like, "Well, no, it's not. That's just your opinion." But you know, people saying things, and you know, like you can't drink whiskey this way, you can't drink whiskey that way, and all the kind of things. And it does really get on my nerves, because a lot of people are talking down about things they don't really understand. That's the most annoying thing. It's like, oh, chill filtration is bad. Okay, explain chill filtration to me before you actually before you go down that route.
I've seen a lot of it, and there's 2 main whiskey groups in Australia, and one's big, one's worse than another. And you see it's no industry on there that are having a go or being negative. And I think that's because in the industry, we're all in it for together, as we talked about before.
Yeah.
But I am super glad that we have people with these amazing opinions. That's what we're all here for, to educate and to share the love of whiskey around. And there's no space for it.
Yeah.
So, and when it comes to education, I am super glad when someone is really wanting to learn and know. I was that person where I was desperate for knowledge, and whatever I learned, I wanted to share. So when someone shares something that they've learned that's either not quite right, I think it's awesome. Because they've just learnt that. They're now translating it through their brain and putting it out through their mouth as how they've interpreted it. And I always think that that's great, because they're the people that kind of keep us in jobs, right?
100%.
Yeah. So I think it's amazing that people are so knowledgeable and wanting, and like sponge mode when it comes to that knowledge. Yeah. But I think it can be channeled into a positive light. And I think that that's the best way that we can move forward. But I strongly hate the hate.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you should be actively encouraging people to get into the category and enjoy it in whatever way they like. And a lot of the stuff that we see is going to put people off. And Sam Simmons, again, who was on this podcast, whatever it is, was saying that, you know, when he first got into whiskey, because he moved over to Edinburgh from Canada, and I think he was working and got into a bit of blogging, and then kind of found his way, and eventually became global Balvenie BA. But you know, he said at one, you know, I think his first was, he might correct me if I'm wrong, I think he said it was a Highland Park, and he really loved it, and he took it to some friends and shared it, that kind of idea. But he said, you know, if I'd share that online now in the forums we have, there's a good chance he would have had it rain down on him, and he might not have ever pursued whiskey as at first an interest and then a career if he'd have had that response, and we would have lost one of the great figures in our industry. So think of how many we might be losing now every time someone goes, oh no, that's rubbish, you shouldn't be doing that, all that kind of thing. So I mean, and that's what's up to people like you and me who choose to be vocal about whiskey, to try and say, no, just come away in and drink it however you like, enjoy it, tell us about it, talk about it, and keep going on that journey.
I'm sorry to sound basic, but positive vibes only. It's the way it should be in the whiskey industry. I think that's the way we kind of operate as industry, and that consumer base, I think, needs to sort of follow suit and conduct themselves like our wonderful ambassadors and whiskey makers around the world.
100%. And it must be said that, you know, we are talking about a minority of the consumer base, I think, for the most part, you know, and it's a lot like a lot of things. The few can spoil it for the many, but also the negative voice doesn't need to be, or it tends to be the loudest, doesn't have to be the loudest, quantifiable. So yeah, that's if you're out there, if you're starting your whiskey journey, or no matter where you are on it, actually ignore the haters, because drink what you want and just enjoy it.
Exactly. And do you know what? There's no wrong way to drink it. There's no wrong whiskey to love or to like. I mean, when we talk about Desert Island Drams, wait till you hear my favorites, and what I would drink consistently. And I'm well known for slugging this on alive. But I think that you like what you like, and make sure you own that and know yourself well enough to turn around and go, I like this. And this is my jam right now. Yeah, I mean, when I met my partner, he was like, I love Glenfiddich 12. And I'm like, I haven't been there for a very long time. Like, I haven't had Glenfiddich 12 for a very long time. And a lot of people would actually say that it's a very common whiskey, and we all move away from it. It's generally one of the first ones we have. And we all move away from it. But I went back to it with him, and it was stellar.
Great dram. There's a reason it's the best whiskey in the world.
Exactly. Yeah.
And has been.
So, and I think we get so caught up in our whiskey journeys when we're learning. I was one of them. When we're learning, that we get so too far into knowledge and just forget that it's about the experience.
Exactly. It's easy to ignore common and maybe kind of less interesting isn't the right word, but less kind of dramatic whiskeys. But they're not bad whiskeys. And, you know, you always come back to them, you know, whether they be blends or entry-level single malts or anything like that.
I've tasted thousands and thousands of whiskeys. And I tell you, the ones I remember are always attached to one of those amazing moments.
Yeah.
And most of them are around with friends in an experience. I mean, when we interview people on Whiskey Roundtable, we ask the question of what's your greatest whiskey experience? And a lot of the answers with everyone around the world is purely on an experience with other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it. It's about an experience. I mean, one of the best experiences I had was sitting around a fire on Wild Turkey Distillery, passing a bottle of Wild Turkey. Sorry?
Hopefully not too close to the distillery.
It was a big bonfire.
All right.
Passing around, I mean, this is pre-COVID, by the way, passing around a bottle of Wild Turkey rye.
Yeah.
And then the Russell's rye, which is stellar, and we can't get it here in Australia. But we're passing it around the fire, and I remember the taste of that whiskey because of that moment.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it can be any whiskey if that moment is perfect.
Absolutely. I remember being in a hot tub in Aberfeldy, drinking Dewar's 18 from the bottle, having a karaoke battle during Bohemian Rhapsody with the people next door. That's a really long story for another day, but you know.
That needs to be a podcast too.
Don't forget that one. Well, I mean, that's the thing is that's what we're about to move on to is I asked people what's their favorite whiskey memory or, you know, drinks memory or whatever. And it's not necessarily related to the drams, related to an experience. But before I want to kind of talk about, firstly, sometimes you see something and you wish you'd come up with it. And for me, it's the hashtag whiskey took me here. I absolutely love that because
that's my hashtag.
So for those, Alex has an amazing experience, and obviously on social media we'll share a lot of them traveling in whiskey and bits and pieces. And the hashtag she uses is whiskey took me here. And the question that I've posed to every Desert Island Drams guest has been about, like, what memory is your favorite that you know you only experienced because of your involvement in the whiskey and or drinks industry? And I think it's such an important thing for all of us. And people come back so much to this, not just on this format, but so many others, is that we end up in funny, ridiculous, amazing situations because of our love for whiskey, which sounds daft, but the friendships we have, the memories we have, so many of them. I mean, I looked across my side at my wedding, for example, and everyone was drinks industry. There was no one who I hadn't met without being in the drinks industry.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, there's so much, and I just, whiskey took me here. I just think is the perfect, someone who's a bit weird about language is the perfect phrase for me. So I wish I'd done it. And I might start just using it and stealing it anyway,
Just
but you can't stop me on social media.
Mun Eber from Time from Whiskey, he uses it now. And he's like, sorry, Alex, I'm quoting it and I'm using it. Whiskey took me here. And that was on his trip to see the new Macallan distillery when they just built. He went on a media trip. And he was just like, this is the greatest moment of my life. Hashtag whiskey took me here. I'm all down for anyone using it. But that actually started on the trip I had with Glenfiddich and Balvenie to the distilleries there, where I stayed. I stayed in the William Grant family home. And I spent 4 days at the distillery running around barrel houses and meeting everyone from the distillery. And it was pretty much whiskey brought me here. And for those playing at home, I have done multiple whiskey trips and I have made amazing relationships all around the world. Every time I leave, it's my saddest moment, leaving a new place that I've been, because I've just made some great new friends and I do not know when I'll ever see them again apart from on social media. So I have been incredibly grateful for my history in trips and this industry because of the people I met. I have also another saying that says, I got into the whiskey industry because of how much I love whiskey, and I've stayed in the whiskey industry because of how much I love the people.
Yeah, it's a very kind of apt way of looking at it. And so many of the things we come down to is about kind of people and place more than liquid and light arms. And I think that's kind of a nice attitude that more and more people seem to be having. But all those experiences, have you got a favorite? If you were to pick, have you got one that you can narrow down to kind of you when you were standing somewhere and thought, fuck me, I'm here because of whiskey?
Oh, okay. Yes, but I wasn't drinking whiskey at the time, but whiskey took me to the experience.
That's all right.
So it was when I was staying at the William Grant family home with Ross Blaney. It was his 30th birthday, so we went in a little bit earlier. And Ross and I have a joke that is called my diva requests. I'm not a diva at all, but whenever I'm traveling with Ross, I'm like, right, so here's what I want out of this trip. And I told him I wanted snow. I told him I wanted to drink out of a Valinch and a couple of other things. And he's like, I don't think I can sort out snow. I'm sorry. I'm going to try my hardest.
It's a bit much. To ask him to control.
But it's a bit too much. So the boys will tell the story that they woke up early one morning and they heard screams from me, who's upstairs in one of the rooms. They're all downstairs. Screams, thud, 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 thud. Door open, thud, 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 thud. The front door open and another scream. So what had happened was I opened my windows when I woke up, and from going from this beautiful green, lush, stunning garden, I opened these windows to this blanket of white with the snow just trickling down. And please know, for an Aussie girl, that's a huge experience. So it was just blanket white, no footprints, no nothing. I'm getting like emotional thinking about it. And because of the screams, all the boys ran upstairs and they run out, and there's me in my my work boots, my cowboy boots, and just a very long hoodie, because that's all I could manage to get on to get outside. So I'm standing there with no pants on, a pair of cowboy boots and a really long hoodie, just screaming, it's snowing. Yeah. And I'm out there, I'm freezing, there's tears streaming down my face. And then we had breakfast with whiskey. Oh, so we had whiskey with breakfast or breakfast with whiskey, either one.
Either way.
But it was just one of those most magical moments of whiskey took me here. I'm having this experience because of the whiskey industry.
Yeah.
So that was one of my most magical moments. I've had so many others, but that was absolutely magical.
I can imagine. I mean, I still remember the first time when I moved to Scotland, and the first time I saw snow my first winter here. You know, you never. It's just, as you say, growing up in Australia. I mean, I grew up in Queensland, and there was no chance. You know?
You get it, right?
And then when I was 19, and then stayed for a winter up the west coast, and then the first time we saw snow, it came down after a pub shift, and it was me and two guys from Melbourne, maybe. But I think it was for all of us the first time we'd seen snow, and so there was just this ridiculous snow fight till 5 a.m. in the beer garden, because what else are you going to do the first time you see snow?
Yeah. Oh, I just remembered what my other diva request was on that trip, which actually happened. It was Barley Angels.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I wanted to throw myself in a malting pit or a malting floor and do Barley Angels, just like Snow Angels. I won't disclose what distillery I did that in. It's on my Instagram. So I got to do Barley Angels. And I think I was the only girl on this trip, and I think the boys thought I was just like crazy, because I literally walked up onto this malting floor and threw myself in and just started waving my arms and my legs like a crazy person.
So you're probably the first person ever to do it as well. So, you know.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think many people had followed before me. That's how I learned what a Barley Angel was. But I was super excited to do it. But I am very aware that not many people get to do that.
Yeah, nice. Well, let's get to the crux of the matter then.
I also didn't give them a choice.
Yeah. Oh, you were in there before anyone could do anything. Yeah.
You're fucking in.
Well, let's move to the heart of the matter. Let's get on to the point at hand. What is possibly the hardest question anyone's ever been asked in the whiskey industry. What 3 drams would you take to your desert island? And just to recap the rules,
let's do
3
it.
bottles, all of them refill constantly. They can be current bottlings, extinct bottlings, all that kind of thing. They're just the 3 drams that you would drink for the rest of your life.
That is seriously like a never-ending pack of Tim Tams, but whiskey.
Yeah, essentially. But you've only got to pick 3, which is really difficult.
It is really hard. I know 2 that I'm just straight up. I love them. So if anyone is a follower or on my Instagram or know my journey, it's Jack Daniels.
Nice.
And I know people may judge for that, but it's just amazing. It's mother's milk. I love it. When my palate's shot and I'm done with cask strength whiskey, I get myself Jack and Coke. It's also whenever I've had barbecues or like my partner smokes meat on this giant smoker, there's always a bottle of Jack on the table or next to the barbecue. And it's just one of those ones that you just walk past, swig out of, and that's it. But I'm always a go-to Jack and Coke girl if I'm out and just sick of drinking cask strength because I can't taste anything anymore. So it's my reset. Nice.
Yeah, it's funny. Almost everyone who's done this is at least one that's like 20 quid a bottle or less. But everyone always wants to take one like comfort, entry level, day-to-day, no nonsense dram. Apart from Frank Murphy, who was like 3 mad unicorns, but like apart from Frank, everyone wants to take at least one like just day-to-day sipper that I don't have to think about.
Well, tell Frank, like, I'll see his 3 and I'll give 2 unicorns out of this, and then Jack Daniels. My second one, which is a unicorn. It's something that I tried sitting around the boardroom at Glenfiddich, above where the gift store is. There's a boardroom up the top there for functions and all that. And we were doing a crazy whiskey tasting. To this day, like Ross Blaney can rattle off what he's had, what we had, but there's this one. And I'm not going to lie, I was pretty hungover and pretty not over drinking whiskey, but the whole trip, breakfast, lunch and dinner was whiskey. Yeah. And everything was great and amazing, but there's this one that actually made me jump up on the table. And I'm not talking like jump up on the table. I pulled up out of my seat, climbed up onto the boardroom table to grab the bottle from the center of this huge table, because I was like, what the hell is that? And that was a cask strength Winter Storm by Glenfiddich.
Oh, okay. Yeah, nice.
Holy moly, at cask strength. And here I am bashing that we're all cask strength junkies here. But the winter storm at Cast Strength was one of the greatest the greatest moments that has just stood out for me for drinking a whiskey. It wasn't in all the beautiful experiences and the moments that I tell you, like we were doing a hardcore tasting, and this one just blew me away.
Yeah.
So that was that I would like on tap endlessly IV drip.
Right. Interesting. Now I tried the Glenfiddich Grand Cru at Cast Strength, champagne finish, and exceptional. Well, I like the Grand Cru at Cast Strength. It really just shone through in horrible ways.
I haven't had it at Cast Strength yet. I did have it in Singapore in November before the pandemic hit. I had it that long ago, and I loved it. I love it. We're doing actually a launch party for it here in. So one of our venues is assisting with the cocktails for Grand Cru launch, which is super exciting. But I do love Grand Cru, but this winter storm Cast Strength is just beyond
amazing.
Oh, now my next one. Wow. There's two that come to mind with this, but I'm going to tell the one with the good story.
Okay, that works for me.
Yeah, I was at Brooklady on Isla, and I wasn't driving. I was with a friend, so we both divided up which distilleries we really wanted to drink at and which ones we'd be okay with taking the drams away. And Brooklady was the one that I wanted to go to and drink. So I had a wonderful experience set up by the beautiful Chloe Wood, where they took us in and we got to open up some casks and do all the wonderful things that we were completely spoilt with. But it was a 2008 Octomore, straight out of the barrel. And I think that's the first photo that I have and the first barrel that I ever sat on, like as in one leg over the other, sitting there with the Valenche pulling out the whiskey. And I actually still I've not been able to bring myself to drink it because I've still got that memory with it. I've got a tiny little bit in a bottle still of it because I did take 2 little bottles home with me.
Yeah.
But that wasn't that I would like that one on tap as well.
Nice. Yeah, it's funny how they're always linked to people in place as well. These drams, the unicorn bottlings. Oh, that's kind of. Well, I mean, I like this. It's not a formula, and no one's told to do anything. But it's always like, not always, but most often it's like something really easy day to day, something beautiful and kind of typically spaced on that kind of world, and something heavily peated for the cold nights. But it's kind of interesting that we all think in very similar ways. I'm very fortunate. I've never been asked to properly do this because I'd never be able to do it. I'd be nine.
Simon.
No.
What are your 3?
Not part of the game.
Okay. All right. I'll have you on round table and I will ask you those questions.
All right. That's fair enough. That gives you time to think at least. Gives you time to think.
There you go. And I appreciate you giving me time to think on that question.
Yeah,
I mean, the answer was always going to be Jack Daniels.
Yeah.
But I mean, I
have 100 proof that's at duty free.
No, but I did just get this one, which is an Australian only release that's just come in from the Whisky Club in Australia. Let's see if I can get that without the light. So it's a single barrel and it's 64.5%.
Nice. Well, when a good friend of mine came over for my wedding, he brought through duty free Jack Daniels, and it's just Jack Daniels but at 50% ABV. Just a standard bottle, but a high proof, and it's mental. It's one of the best American whiskeys I've ever tried.
I really wish I'd doubled up with that one and got 2 because I should have got 1 to drink and 1 to keep. Because I don't know whether you can see on my back bar, I keep whiskey and I don't drink it because of that attachment to where I got it, who gave it to me, the signed bottle. And I have some insane signed bottles and I could just never open them up.
Yeah. Unfortunately, everything you see behind me is definitely open.
So the owners from Speakeasy Group for my 3rd anniversary, because one of them is a keeper of the Quake.
Okay.
He gave me a keeper. Let's see if I can get that. A keeper of the Quake bottling from Highland Park. And yeah, it was bottled in 2018, but made in 1998.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah, so that's another one that I wish was on tap and refilling, purely because I really want to open it, but it's so special.
Yeah, I understand
And once you drink it, it's gone.
that. Alex,
So,
thank you so much for your time. Do you want to give us a quick rundown of your social/online presence with Roundtable and all that, especially for those watching in Oz who will be easily able to consume your content?
yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm not on social media to be an influencer or anything like that. I whiskey culture. There's no E. It's just whiskey as in single malt whiskey. Whiskey culture on Instagram. I'm Alexandra Dahlenburg on Facebook. I've never split that. I just share my whiskey took me here moments. My family's quite present on it. My dad's a barley farmer in Victoria, so rural Victoria. My 94-year-old grandma loves a dram. So she's actually the whiskey thief in my family, and some bottles go missing and I have to keep one shelf that she actually can't touch, purely for that reason. So there is a lot of my family on there, but also our venues and the venues that I've run recently. So that's whiskey culture. And then a year ago, because we were fairly bored in the pandemic, what started out as 4 people getting on live and just talking utter shit, basically. We started Whiskey Roundtable with Matt Bailey, Scott Fitzsimmons, and Andrew Milne. And we're all 4 different people from 4 different walks of the whiskey industry. So I'm bars, Scotty's retail, Matt Bailey's obviously SMWS, and Andrew Milne is the whiskey portfolio brand manager for South Trade. So you've got quite a perspective of the whiskey industry there. And we interview people almost every week now. It's on podcast, Facebook Live, and we do a little bit on Instagram, but that's about it. And that is Whiskey Roundtable.
Nice. Well, I've tuned into a few along the way when I've been able to, and they're always interesting and great insights, especially to see an industry that's at a different part in its life and evolving differently and with different influences compared to what obviously I see firsthand here every day. So if you like this kind of stuff, folks, please tune into that.
It's also wonderful for anyone overseas because we are talking a lot about. We didn't intend for it to turn out this way, but it is very heavily focused on the Australian whiskey industry. So we have a lot of Australian distillers on. I mean, look, we've had internationals like Becky Paskin and Dave Broom. So there is other people that do pop in there. But if you are interested in the Australian whiskey industry, we are highlighting the mums and dads distillers and the little guys, if that makes sense. And it's always hilarious because Australian distillers, they're very, very down to earth and straightforward. So you do get a little bit of swearing content, but definitely a lot of slugging out of a bottle kind of content from myself.
Yeah, nice. Well, obviously definitely worth tuning in for. But Alex, thank you so much for your time. It's been lovely to catch up with you as well after what must be 2 or 3 years since I've seen you, I think. So
I think it's 3 years since we met in Scotland.
Absolutely. Well, lovely to see you again. And hopefully next time it's in person, either this side of the world or that. But take care of yourself and keep dramming.
Thank you so much. You too.